So, it's been a week and a half, and no one has sent me a single video with their best argument explaining the mechanisms for anarchy and how it could work. I would assume someone would have a video made up long ago explaining it, as it is a core part and the most fatal flaw that most people who are against anarchy see. So far I've had no responses from anyone. I thought that would have been the easiest thing. They just have a quick go-to video that most of them agree on. If this had been on atheism, I would have been flooded. We would have had go-to videos galore, but for some reason anarchy doesn't. So here goes the next video that, unfortunately, you can be offended but is condescending. So now we get to the point where Thom makes some great points about government, but this is also where we start to diverge. There are pros and cons to what he has to say. His biggest critiques of the state is the following: a centralized institution of power with monopoly on violence, a geographic area over which violence is exerted, an administrative body which lays claim to the use of this violence. I watched the video he recommended on how somehow people would form a voluntary collectives and interactions, and it totally lost me on the mechanisms for how this would work. If you're listening and can break it down like you did with the other things on the way, that we have examples of working on a large scale, please let me know, Thom, or anyone else in the comments section. If you have a video on it already, please share it in the comments, and I will probably make a fourth part here. At the individual level is the only descriptions I've seen how it works, but when you get a large number of people in a collective group, groupthink tends to kick in and it changes the entire psychology and dynamics. There are many reasons for a state, though there are many horrible things done by a state. A state will either be good or it won't, just like anarchy will be. It all depends on the people involved. However, he points out that the more powerful capitalism becomes, the more the state violence favors the rich. This means the more capitalistic a state is, the less a state has legitimate authority. However, there are some very good advantages to a state. First things is humans are naturally short-sighted and bad at statistics. So the less capitalistic a state is, the more they can implement laws such as healthcare and social security that can allow people protections years down the road even if they grumble about paying for it now. They also have the advantage of the economics of scale that no voluntary collective or corporation could hope to match in terms of savings for the average person. There are psychological drives to also want a strong leader, as we are still animals, and if there is a need for expediency, leadership is essential. You don't want a democratic ship. You need a leader who can take suggestions and make snap decisions, or nothing is going to happen. California is a place where direct democracy has been tried, and it needs a few decades more and some tweaks to figure out how to make it work correctly, so they don't do things like vote for tax cuts and more spending. That can cause bankruptcy and a downturn. I do think that direct democracy should happen twice a year, if not more, as the number of questions on this election's ballot was through the roof, and there was hardly enough time to get informed on all the issues. Further technology and cybersecurity may make direct democracy a lot easier, and perhaps in the future we could replace the House of Representatives with digital direct democracy, but that will be a long way off with our current horrible cybersecurity. The basic minimum income could only at this point be run by a government, with a use of force, as psychology shows that the wealthier you are, the more likely you are to try and hoard wealth. The poorer you are, the more likely you are to share your wealth, which comes to the concept of a monopoly on the use of force. A monopoly on force in a state with low capitalism is actually fairly advantageous. The need for force and prevention of money hoarding is essential, as I said before. The need for force to prevent attacks is also something that only can be really done with the scale of economics that a state can provide. The need for force in the prevention of genocide is also something that can cause good in the world. America has constantly praised their war that we have at an insane rate as bringing freedom and democracy to people. These are what are hailed as good wars. However, the only wars that seem to have made the world a better place are ones that export freedom, democracy, and income equality. We gave freedom and democracy to the Weimar Republic, Iraq, Afghanistan, the list goes on and on. The only ones that actually succeeded in not blowing up in our faces or taking decades of unrest were ones where we forced laws for increased income equality, such as post-Nazi Germany and Japan, as well as the US South post-Civil War. We also helped to rebuild those areas using the Marshall Plan to help the people who were hurt by their own government in the war. You can't eat freedom or votes, which Eisenhower knew very well during the rebuilding of Europe. Without increased income equality, Trying to spread freedom and democracy is a futile effort, and you will get demagogues rising up and horrible ideas will spread, such as when Bush dismantled the Iraqi military, which happened to employ half of Iraq, which led to ISIS. Lastly, I'll say this. If you don't want the government to do something, you have to figure out a sustainable way to replace them. If you can do that, the need for government will become obsolete. The blockchain technology is exactly an example of this. Until then, the economics of scale of a government provides keeps prices on things low and allows major projects and the will of the people who actually vote somewhat represented. There are better ways to increase representation of democracy. We have many experiments to glean from, but tearing down the old system won't work. You have to replace it with a new system or no one will buy it. Tearing it down and expecting it to magically be replaced, which I'm not saying that's what you guys are saying, with a different system is just ignorant and naive at best. Someday, the way tech is going, true democracy or anarchy may work. Until then, work hard on the mechanisms to ensure it works, and work to create a new system, instead of claiming the government is just a religion. If we were to reach the point to fix the government we have, even further anarchist, scientifically tested options might be achievable. Just remember, republicanism, democracy, anarchy, capitalism, libertarianism, socialism, and communism should all be viewed as just a tool set. We should decide where each one works best. We are currently not using the right tools for the right jobs to achieve maximum human well-being, and we must work together to change the tools we use for the best outcome. But the second you decide to use just one of these ideas to try and fix every problem with it, it will become a religion and you end up damaging parts of society a better tool should fix.